Welcome to the wedding of Connor Roy and Willa Ferreira, our weekly guide to the inner workings of the Roy family. I'm Chuckles the Clown, aka Zachary Shevich, and joining me, he's scheduling a conference call with the world's best airplane medical expert. It's
Yes, sir.
Arturo Zurita.
Been working around the clock to make this statement. If you would like your name on it, Zach, we're including everyone's name possible before we put out the statement for the statement of the statement.
I think for the share of the for the state of the shareholders and the stock price, my name should be on that statement.
And we have enough time. The markets haven't closed yet. Actually, officially from this
Exactly.
one.
This week's Succession, a big one, a memorable one. 16 minutes into the episode, Jesse Armstrong delivering an absolutely brutal punch that I don't think many people saw coming, or at least they didn't see it coming quite so soon. Logan Roy, American Titan and beloved father, dead at the age of 84 years old. He died as he lived, attending to business instead of being by his family. We talked last week about how things seem to be lining up for Logan to die estranged from his kids. But
His children.
Arturo, were you ready to see it happen so soon?
Might be a little delayed. I feel like I'm on the
Oh,
his website
oh yeah, we're
World
having
Network
some.
coming in late. I'm professional. I see you put the Los Angeles Times staying up there.
Yeah,
I was completely shocked when it happened. Hold on, I'm gonna refresh really quick.
cool. Yeah, I mean it's such a shocking thing to occur, especially in a show where I feel like we've taken for granted that we get these family dynamics, that we're gonna see all these amazing actors continue to do their thing. And like one thing that I talked about, I was asked a question on Twitter before the season even started, things that I would like to see happen. I kind of was hoping that we'd get Logan Roy's death before the penultimate episode or something like that, so we could see what actually happens. How, when the kids have to deal with the vacancy he leaves behind. But to see it happen in the first half of the season rather than the back half or the penultimate episode, it runs
Biggest
counter
rug
to
pull.
what I think we expect from TV, and just is that much more shocking, that much more surprising.
I was working on something last night and I was trying to beat it. I always forget if it's at 8 or 9 because I don't watch
Mhm.
it live like that. And I get one text message and it's 3 dots, and I don't know if this man's still typing. Something happened. Passover didn't go well, and I immediately realize, damn, I'm 20 minutes late to the episode. I drop what I'm doing. We go set up, and I knew the moment. Like I had already known 20 minutes in something's gonna happen because that's when this man texts me. And when it
Mhm.
happens, I was like, all right, they knocked it out of the park. We've been so used to HBO pulling that episode 9, maybe an 8, three, three,
Yeah. And
with that many left.
it completely upends your expectations for the rest of the season too, because we were already like forecasting, what is this going to mean, how is this going to play out. Now Roman is on his father's side, how is that going to affect the dynamic? And they just pulled the rug out from under you. And I thought it was not only just like surprising in the sense that like it's not how moments like this are typically delivered in a season of television, like we were saying,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I thought it was also extremely smart and extremely effective of them to have his death come not in some like glorifying death scene, not with Brian Cox able to deliver one last monologue. I thought it was really uh well well crafted to barely even show him. Like you don't
Yeah.
kind of get that moment of finality. And like I don't know, I don't mean to get like intensely personal right off the bat, but like I don't know about you, the way that I've experienced death in my own life with the people who I've loved has never really been like we sit around a hospital bed and wait for them to go or something like that. It's been receiving a call at a moment when you don't expect it and then
Mm-hmm.
having to react to that. And I just found that to be so much more relatable, so much more effective and emotional, and just really tragic in that moment.
Yeah. No, I agree with you 100%. Before you even like let that process, there's a part of you when you're watching the show that makes you go, on Easter? is this man gonna rise up again? And they do this little tug and pull where they don't fully want to show you, right? Is this a big stunt that's happening on the wedding day? Is he still going to show up? Is he gonna, pull a fast one on the kids one last time? And then
Hmm.
slowly you realize, no, it's not. And that like speaks more to like how messed up the family dynamics are. That may be the first thing you think of before it's anything else. Um, but then they show you little glimpses of his body there, and I think that's when it really starts coming together. And they knocked it out of the park. I'm sure you watched the after the show where they mentioned
Yes.
just a little bit about how they filmed it. But man, do we need some behind the scenes? They talked about filming within this yacht, right? Like you have some
Hmm.
crazy exteriors out there, and I'm like, are they actually filming in this place? Turns out they had them set ready to hear the news, cameras set up and like hiding. They said he was hiding film rolls in order to be able to swap them out. And I think it brings an
Yeah.
energy to the scene that you were describing. When you get news like this, it happens on an episode 3 of your life. It does not happen
Hmm.
towards the end where everyone's gearing for it. It comes out of nowhere. And the way they all reacted, especially Culkin's character, Roman
Yes.
has a couple of bits that we're gonna get into that just ah, I thought it they did it to justice. That was fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, it's it's awfully sad, and it is weird because like we come on this podcast and in our recaps and we talk about Succession. We always emphasize what awful people these are, what incompetent, heartless, and just like really uh malintentioned a lot of the time people these can be. But I think it still speaks to how well written the show is, that like you can in that moment really empathize and feel with them, because we've all been in those positions of having our bearings thrown off, of having tragedy strike close to home. And again, those performances, like you're saying, Kieran Culkin as Roman, just so uh obviously broken as a person and incapable of handling that moment. I thought for me, the saddest moment of the whole episode is when he's struggling to even tell his dad things as they have the phone up to his ear, and he says, you're a good dad, you did a good job." And then like as if knowing he's lying, he kind of has to pull the phone away and be like, "No, I can't." He's not going to let himself even go further down that path. And it speaks again to the thing that we were talking about last episode, and that like Logan didn't live his life in a way that set it up where he could have that kind of happy farewell with his kids, where they could
His
all sit
kids.
around and hold hands. Like when when the kids are each given a turn to try to talk to him on the phone, they're all struggling to even say that they love him. Like it's just
That
so alien
was
for
the
them,
best part.
and they have so much baggage with him. Did I Succession is like it rides that black comedy line, but in this episode, did you find it to be more effective as a as a trauma drama tragedy, or was it still the
Yeah,
black comedy that pulled you
the
through?
traumedies that they say. I think the show's always done a really good job of going from comedy to drama. Even in the sense of what the first thing you pulled up, right, was the show kind of bleeding into real life events, which I think the LA Times is always playing with. Shout out Movie Files. He was talking about how TMZ may have reports. Like at this point, I don't even know if he's kidding. Like, does TMZ, because the LA Times putting out obituaries. There's the fact that he died. You know how cheeky these writers are, right? These British writers are always going up, giving their Emmy speeches, giving a couple of subs, right? Dying on Margaret Thatcher's death day as well, I think isn't a coincidence from these writers. Uh, but to answer your question between a comedy and a tragedy, I've told you that the best comedies build up to have the most dramatic moments, and this is just
Hmm.
an hour and 3 minutes of pure drama because of these characters who you've sympathized. You don't like them, but you've sympathized with them so much. You think they're buffoons. They're grown up kids, and yet you feel for them in this moment of tragedy because of the way that it's shot, because of the fact that they don't really showcase you a body, so you're almost left in their perspective. Is this real?
Yeah.
Is this not? Do you even trust the crew that's already putting a thing together without you guys being involved in it? Out of the three, I think the fact that Culkin's character, you had mentioned a moment where he doesn't like want to accept it, and he spends the whole episode not wanting to say that it's actually happened. There was two
In
things he did.
denial,
It
yeah.
was this moment where he just, yeah, when he gives the phone away, where he's like, I can't do this, just take it. And then when Shiv comes in and he does this makeshift hug to her, He does it to Connor as well. He just like
Yeah.
squeezes his arms. You were talking about everyone having an Emmy season. My man showed up in this episode to play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He was great.
I mean, it felt. You know what? I knew that this was going to be a great Roman episode is when Kieran showed up on Hot Ones. It's like, oh, they're ready for him to win his Emmy this week
The
for
rollout. The
sure.
rollout was already prepping you for it. And I see you got some links over here. They were prepping. They're not funny, bro. They get you attached to these characters, and then they're wiggling little Easter eggs right in front of you. They're kind of malicious.
Yeah,
They're pretty mean. They're worse than Logan.
exactly. I mean, Succession is a show that has in the past hid some things in broad daylight. In their season 3 poster, there was kind of a shifting of the allegiances between the two different posters that came out. But the season 4 poster left something in plain sight that feels like a terrible taunt right now. In that, if you look in the reflection of the building, there is that plane flying overhead, and I don't know if I'm just overthinking this aspect of it, but
Nah.
you're not allowed to fly over New York City. Like, it's restricted for air travel because of 9/11 of it all. So that they put that there is extremely intentional on their behalf. And yeah, I mean, they knew this would be the episode that got us.
Yeah. On top of that, the fact that the social media team came out and was also posting the text messages, really honing in on the fact that all of those calls early on that you dismiss about Tom messaging Shiv end up becoming a really big deal because it was her ignoring the fact she could have spoken to her father at the end. One thing that bothers her, like, was I speaking to somebody who was still there? Like, why was Carrie talking to uh, what's his name more? Why was everybody having the ability to have a longer conversation than her and not realizing that it was there the whole time? So I think HBO secretly putting it in the poster right there as you see it, yeah, easily. Just a way to taunt you. I think they've done it with all of their posters. I think this is the best one yet because of the fact that they did it so early.
Yeah, there we go. Now the pictures are up on the stream for people to see if they haven't yet. That plane that's hiding in the poster there. Very
It's
devilish
good.
of
It's
them.
good.
Yeah. So what else did you struck you about this episode? I mean, it's obviously very sad. I think just talking more about moments that really like gave me a lump in my throat. The way that Shiv reacts to hearing that Logan is dead with "No, I can't have that." I mean, it's real like send it back to the kitchen vibes, but at the same time, like she's just that's all she can do to process this moment. Um,
Yeah.
and just the way in which all the kids are clearly like they don't have the emotional intelligence or
Emotional
the
capacity.
like yeah they're not settled enough, their souls are restless and they don't know what to do with themselves in this moment. And how when they get that first call from Tom saying that Logan is very, very sick, all Roman and Kendall can do is try to like find out who's in control of the situation. Can we talk to the medical service? Let's get the world's best heart doctor
Can
on
I
the
speak
phone in
to the
1 to 2
pilot?
minutes.
You can't speak to the pilot, son. He's flying a
Oh,
plane.
let's give a quick shout out to everybody's saying like the that Kendall and Shiv and Roman
The
are giving
kids,
great
yeah,
obviously
of course.
Peter Friedman, the actor who plays
They
Frank,
were working.
is such an incredible amount of gravitas. That phone call with Kendall that you mentioned, when he has to like hit the plane in frustration and tell him, "Son, you can't talk to the pilot." I mean,
Yeah.
it's so real. I think Frank is actually Kendall's godfather too, and
He's day
he
one.
really is, and exactly has been kind of Kendall, the closest thing Kendall's had to a father at many points. So
Mm-hmm.
just to hear him try to get that across to somebody
Yeah.
clearly in denial, it's the kind of thing that I don't think we get to see very much on TV, and it's what partly made it feel so tragic to me to see.
Yeah. Like you brought up earlier, he had just had the last week's conversation with all of them at the karaoke bar. They could make that, we're not as strange as, the media may want to make it out to be. But the fact that you have them at the wedding and he dies on a toilet in an airplane. Beautiful airplane, by the way. It was a lot bigger once it landed. I was like, how'd they get a
Right.
bed in there? Because it's that massive. He doesn't get the helicopter. The fact that everyone who's there isn't fully related to him, including Tom. Like Tom is at the point of getting the divorce. You have the crew of people who have been there from the start. Mentioning Frank, Frank was there at a point in time in the beginning, in the first episode, when you get like the initial scare, what sets everything off in the series that
Yeah.
he may be dying. So who's going to be the successor? You finally get it here, which I've heard a lot of people get a little worried. People would be me. If Logan's gone, what's the show, man? I don't know. I love everybody else, but I would be lying if we're not acknowledging the fact that this man carried the show to the degree that he also carried the kids within the show as the father figure. So if you get rid of him, there's that meme about this is Logan when they look at the stocks after the announcement of the death and how low they go. I'm looking at that and I hope that's
Mhm.
not the viewership for Succession. I don't want it to be like The Walking Dead that after they clobbered one of our favorites, woo, did it go all the way down? Because I think he really holds a lot of that power. Like you said, without him, where's the tension? Without him, do the rest of them even know what they're doing? Does it all just fall apart?
The, yeah, it will be interesting to see how the show is able to navigate its future without Brian Cox giving that titanic performance at its center. That all being said, like there is that stretch run in that first season as after he has, like you mentioned, those health problems, where there are a couple episodes where he's basically just held up in a hospital bed saying next to nothing. So the show has been good without him playing a central role in it, but it's also that was early in its run when we're getting introduced to a lot of the characters, not in this moment where he's in such an integral part of all of their lives and they all have this sense of lack of fulfillment because of where their relationships
Because of
ended
him.
with him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that the show will feel like there is this sort of like presence missing, but I don't know if I think that's a bad thing, right? Because that kind of is this meta feeling that the show is giving you that puts you in the shoes of the people at the company, of the people in the Roy family. Like there is this central gravitational force that's suddenly been thrown aside, and now if everybody is going to like travel in their different directions and bring chaos into the universe, there's nothing to hold them all together the way that Logan once did.
Do you feel that this death being pre-planned so far ahead of it is the reason why they're ending it this time? Because you think of other shows like The Office. Once you removed Steve Carell, what happened? A lot of people still like it, but you removed
Yeah.
that aspect of it, and it changed the course of where that show was going, and eventually ended
Hmm.
to the ending of the show. So, do you think that once they pulled him out, they realized, oh, okay, we're not going to continue it without him, or is it a matter of as the way the story goes? We have a couple more episodes to fully answer the question, which was the whole purpose of Succession: who succeeds?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's sort of what you're saying. The fact that the show's called Succession,
The
we have
throne.
to
Yeah,
see.
yeah.
Yeah, we have to see who succeeds him, right? Like that's sort of the promise made by the title of the show. So I think getting these next 7 episodes to kind of see where all the kids land, see how they shift power and jockey for control of the company will give us like enough of an off ramp to sort of get a sense of what the arc of this story is. But yeah, I
Mhm.
think it is another case for why it is good to maybe end the show now before it goes down a path that is less exciting than the one it's currently on.
I feel you.
Logan is so central to all these characters that I don't know if it makes as much sense for to be like following them dealing with their daddy issues a season removed from his death. I mean,
Makes sense.
maybe it makes sense in like reality, but maybe not as much in TV. So I feel like it's cool because they've given us enough time to really find out what happens at uh when the guy at the top finally is removed, right? Like we get it's not we're not getting like a cursory like oh and then Kendall went on to da 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 type of epilogue. We're really gonna see all the fallout from this death. But I don't know if we need to see much more than that. I don't know
Hmm.
if that's the purpose of the show.
Yeah. So 100%, that was him in the body bag. No switcheroos. No Easter
No
Logan.
switcheroos.
Yeah. No.
A little
No.
too
He's not
late for
rising.
April Fools.
So yeah. You don't think he's gonna pull something in the next one? He's gonna suckers.
I mean, for I was thinking that for maybe like 15 minutes there, especially with Roman just refusing to admit that he was
Yeah.
dead or believe it. I don't think
Nah,
so.
the moment they
Not
were
that
waiting
show,
there for him,
unfortunately.
yeah. Let's start it back from the top if you don't mind, though, because I know you got a little bit of a
Let's do
plot
it.
breakdown. Can we talk about Jerry, dude, or wherever you want to begin it? But I thought that was gonna be the big pull. The moment I got your dot dot dots, I went, oh, they're trying to get rid of Jerry. Jerry's gonna pull a I almost started wondering, did Jerry pull? How much did Jerry pull?
So yeah, the episode begins like a typical Succession episode. People on phones in cars making demands of each other. Roman on his way to Connor's wedding gets a call from his dad saying that he's uncomfortable with Gerri and wants Roman to fire her. You feel like this is an
Wrong.
actual request from Logan, or is he just
One
testing
hundred
Roman's
percent.
loyalty here?
I think it's a twofer. That's what makes Logan so great is that he knows how to knock out two birds, one stone. I think he was getting ready to get rid of her because he knew where things needed to shift to. I don't think it
Hmm.
was a smart decision, and I think what really led me to that is not only have I been a Jerry stan, I've been saying she's going to come out unscathed by the end of it all. We already know one of the most pivotal scenes from last season was the picture being sent to her phone. I don't think it's a smart idea to go against that. There was also, and I'm blinking on her name, Demara, the actress's name. Uh, sh-
Yeah, Carolina.
Thank you. When they tell her that they're gonna swap her out, right? The first thing she does is her eyes get really big, as in like this isn't a smart move. So
Hmm.
all of that leads me to believe that it wasn't the most. I don't want to call it a smart or not a smart decision because it did come from Logan. I'm sure he had something else to do, but because he's no longer here to see it through, I
Hmm.
think we see repercussions later for a character who really needed Jerry by his side and didn't get that.
Yeah, I think it's not gonna, because we see from the next week on Succession stuff that like Gerri isn't being cast aside. She's gonna stay integral to the company.
Yes,
Now
sir.
that
Hey,
the person who
I
wanted her
know.
fired is gone.
I
So
know you do your over under, but I've never seen someone
yeah,
like she didn't go over, she didn't go under. She like went both ways and ended up right where she began in the episode.
exactly. Push.
I love it.
Um, yeah, I mean, what else is there with that? Uh, Roman, I think, while he is like being tested here, it's also Logan probably still being mad about about Gerri and Hugo laughing at Carrie, because those are the two people who weren't included on the flight there, who ended up at Connor's wedding. So maybe a bit petty on Logan's
Great
behalf,
point.
but
Great
yeah,
point. They were okay.
yeah.
That's their
So
punishment. Go to my son's wedding. That's terrible, bro.
exactly, yeah. Well,
Get
Connor's
stuck on
wedding
this yacht.
specifically feels like it could be a
Uh,
punishment.
yeah.
Uh, After that, Tom gives Greg a call, letting him know that he's got 3 or 4 people Gregging for him
That's a
before
good
he
line.
gets on the flight to Sweden with Logan to try and conquer Matson.
Hmm.
Alexander Payne, we didn't hear from him at all this week, but probably going to play a big role going forward. And the kids no longer have that buffer of Logan between them either. So
Hmm.
interesting to see what ultimately happens with the Gojo deal. The teaser for the future episodes of Succession seemed to hint that that's going to be a lot of what we'll see is them dealing with Matson and the Gojo deal, and whether or not they'll still go through. What are your expectations for the future of that deal and how Kendall, Roman, and Shiv deal with it?
I don't think they can handle Matson, which is Skarsgård, right? I don't think they can handle who do they owe $10 billion to that they won't be able to
Pierce.
do now. They can't handle Pierce. Who else was
Yeah, is the
involved? Who
Pierce
do we
deal just
have?
out of the window now? It'll be
Like
curious to
like
see how they handle all
after
that.
you broke all that down to me, and I'm like, so does any of that even matter now?
Who knows?
The third one, I remember what's his name, pianist was also kind of in the play there
Yeah,
when they had
Adrian
meetings
Brody.
with him. Yeah, they can't handle Adrian Brody
Is he
either.
gonna
Like
come
I
back?
just don't see any of them. Whoever comes back, these children cannot handle them. So it's just up in the air for all of them. I really do think Logan was keeping it all together.
Meanwhile, back at the docks, people are getting ready to board the boat for Connor's Statue of Liberty side wedding. But Connor thinks the cake is inadequate. He
This was
doesn't want to
sad.
see the inner parts of it.
That's
But
I
even
always
that,
forget that they don't all have the same mom. I always
yeah.
forget that.
Hmm. Yeah, and that funny little bit with Connor ends up being another tragic element of these characters' past, as we learn the origins of Looney Cake, being that his mother was taken to the insane asylum and he ate cake for a week after that. Just like one of those very sad things that Succession just drops in
Huge.
passing.
Just a massive thing dealing with his character just right
Yeah.
there. And then before you can do that, yeah, major character dies. Only in Succession.
I mean, it's probably the most personal thing that we've heard about
About this man.
Connor through the history of the
Yeah.
show so far.
Because you see him get really aggravated, and at one point you're just looking at him, you're like, yeah, that's Connor. Of course, he would find something to complain. That's what Willa says. Always finding something to
Mhm.
complain. They also drop it on her wedding day, which I thought was an insane thing to do. To not tell their new sister-in-law, oh yeah, this is a massive thing about your husband or brother.
Mhm.
First of all, eating cake for a week that's insane. Just that concept alone, to just eat nothing
Yeah,
but cake, sponge cake. But then like, well, yeah, that it's a huge traumatic moment in his life, and yeah, you see the ripple effects here. So another big moment.
absolutely. Then Roman leaves a message for Logan asking if he's a cunt. And then the kids board the boat, get shown to a private room. As Shiv leaves to talk to Connor, Roman gets a call from Tom. Your dad's very, very sick. And then yeah, that's the floor falling out from under them. The very normal episode of Succession becomes a very memorable one from that point forward. Uh,
You took it seriously
I
right
don't.
from the start.
What was that?
You took it seriously right from the start.
I think so, because it's just such a different tone than what we've heard from Tom, and the sort of scramble and inability to like get a hold of the situation brought this urgency to it that I don't think we often feel from Succession. I think it took me maybe like 5 minutes of that happening to start thinking like, is this another play from Logan? But yet in that moment, I thought I was immediately recognizing what they could potentially be doing, and was in a bit of shock because it's just so atypical for a show like this to do.
Yeah, I took it
Uh,
immediately. I said no until I saw the body.
the chest compressions sold it.
That's all you need from that angle. That's
Yeah,
all you need.
yeah. What's the matter here? Saying, did he try to join the Mile High Club with Anchor Lady Carrie?
Nah,
I saw some people
he
speculating
was
that
playing
they
boards on the
talked about.
floor.
People they were talking about how they needed to get the key to get him out of the bathroom. So if Carrie's in
Yeah.
there, I don't think that happens. As fun as
No, no, no.
that
But
theory
Carrie
might
was
be,
smiley too much.
Chuckles the clown over there. I like Tom's
Crazy.
line. Judging by her grin, it looks like she caught a foul ball at Yankee Stadium.
Yeah. No, that was ridiculous. I liked it though. Commentary on too many politicians who come out with too many giggles when they're speaking about something serious. So
Yeah, so we talked about how the kids' immediate response is to kind of demand that they get the best treatment and the best people, and to try and take control of the situation, since that sort of has been their go-to method of dealing with adversity, is
yeah.
ask to speak to the manager of the plane or something like that.
Hi
But
God.
like it, here it's just so much more tragic because you see it's their inability to handle it, and their inability to uh,
Process.
be emotionally ready for it. Yeah. What did
Agreed.
you think about the moments immediately when they received the call, and not having Shiv there? Shiv, of course, also ignoring a couple calls from Tom that maybe would have gotten them on the phone
Mm-hmm.
with their dad a little bit earlier.
Yeah, I think them posting that after the fact from the official HBO account was just again them taunting you even more by saying, "Oh, make sure you pick up that call." Uh, I think that's why she feels the most guilt when she comes in and she's wondering about the time, because I think she's a person who wants to see who else's fault it could be besides hers. I think the
Hmm.
fact that they waited so long to call Connor didn't even get a pretend to your ear thing. Like they did for Shiv, like they might have even been doing
Yeah,
for them. He didn't even get like a
he's such an
fake one. They
afterthought to them.
such an afterthought, but for his first thought to be, I'll save it. His first thought was so sad. I'm sure you'll bring it up right now in the outline. That was terrible to hear. But that initial call and it going just between the two of them and the way that it's shot there. There's a lot of things in movies where they'll set up like two cameras, or they'll set up like one camera and one angle. Actor will do their bit, and then the other actor will do their bit, and there's just a loss that you have there where the actor
Hmm.
is acting but off of an impression that they heard about an hour ago. Here it
Right.
does not feel like that. It is not a break in a setup. It feels like they're reacting to each other and the whoever may be on the phone in real time, and that's why it's so effective. I don't know if you watch this show or this episode without having seen any of it, and you come away going
Hmm.
like, "Whoa, that was the greatest episode of series history." If you don't know the characters, I think you'll still be super involved. But I think it's as simple as just letting them work. No
Yeah.
crazy, misses scene shots or whatever. Which all of that's still in there. They plan for it, but it's just putting them in this pressure cooker because of us knowing them so long. You just let it flow, and it delivers.
Yeah, it's the intensity of the moment, and all the actors were like clearly up for it. I personally, I thought that Kieran Culkin was the one who blew me away the most, but I thought everybody was really excellent on this episode. And it's like in the after the episode, Alan Ruck was talking about how when Sarah Snook came up to him as Shiv
Yes,
with tears in her eyes, like that's all the motivation you need to act in those scenes. They all were just so emotionally in it and
it's a
so
relay race.
emotionally available.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
I
The
like
relay
how they.
race is a good way to put it because they're all passing the emotional baton in that moment.
Well, they said it was like a play, and like I was telling you, when they were up there
Yeah,
and they were dude, they had this shot. It was like they were on the new iPhones. They like zoomed it out a little. They like, let's get more of the towers in there, and you see
yeah.
everything in the background. I'm like, are they filming on this ship in real time? They really make you feel that when they're down there, and like you said, having that play like essence of it brings in an actor who's
Hmm.
almost kind of throwing it to somebody else. And I agree with you that Culkin had the best one. His emotions to everybody else, just a little touch, whatever, felt like it was improv. Like I don't know
Hmm.
how much of it was scripted and how much of it at the moment they just felt like doing something. Um, it's beautiful, just
Yeah.
beautifully filmed.
And we talk about how good the dialogue, how good the writing is on Succession, but like that's not just the really pretty lines. That's all the stammering and half sentences too. The little like I don't yeah, I can't. Like those
Yeah,
are
I'm not sure.
all
Yeah,
they tell so much about their characters, and one of
uh
the
huh.
things I love so much about the show is how much you can learn about the characters through things they say that just show you bits of their personality like that. But like you're mentioning that moment when they again in the behind the scenes they talked about they had a 27-minute scene, a 28-page scene that they shot with three different cameras, hiding
Whew.
different bits of film reel on the set to swap out because film cameras can only shoot for 10 minutes
10.
simultaneously. But it keeps you in the moment, and that sense of urgency, which is so rare on Succession, was really really palpable because they're like it, you feel them processing. They go from one room to the other, and you can feel the actor like preparing for the emotional devastation that he has to deliver to the next person. uh,
On top
just
of it, it's a wedding,
some of the most incredible stuff they've done on this show.
and the boy invited press. So you also have that one moment with Greg where he takes a call
Yes.
and he's like, "Well, is your uncle gonna make it? You make it what?" And you don't really know who's a part of the press, so it gives you this almost like the camera is a PR person. The camera is someone from the press
Hmm.
who may just be watching.
Voyeuristic, yeah.
And thank you. Oh, and that part of it, which is something that the show has always had. It always feels like there's someone watching our characters, but
Hmm.
the contained space in this one and what was happening really made it feel really made it stand out a lot more, that you were like almost spying on these people as they were trying to hide this big devastating thing that just happened to them.
Yeah. There is that what it was the moment that you were talking about with Connor. I don't know if I had the bit of
Yeah,
dialogue
really quick,
written
it
in
was
my
just
notes.
earlier on you had mentioned all these lines, and to just take it away from like all the trauma that was happening, there was one early on when everything's still fine and dandy where he goes, they always keep out that Scrooge. He raised a lot of money.
Yeah,
So to go
I
with
got
your
that one.
point that these lines just end up becoming things that show you more about these characters, I thought that was hysterical because it really showcases how he sees himself. He's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Why do you focus so much on the bad things? Don't you know we do good? And it's like that's exactly how Connor sees it. He thinks that the good can outshine the bad when the bad should never be happening to begin with. I thought that was a beautiful line from
Absolutely.
him.
Yeah, I mean, so telling of him for sure. I also thought that this was just like a really interesting bit. I'm showing it on the stream right now that Connor is the one who actually takes time to kind of console each of the siblings while they're all sort of spinning out of control. He actually has a moment of physical intimacy with all of them. And like you mentioned, it is he does sort of have that very weird hug with Roman because Roman doesn't know how to physically interact with other people. I saw
Yeah.
somebody describe it as like a wrestling move, but you know, he gives
Yeah,
he
but he was never gonna flip him over. Do
yeah.
you have the line that Connor says when
The
he hears
Scrooge
the
one?
news? Nah, when he
Oh,
hears the news
yeah,
that his
what was
father
it?
died.
Like he never liked me anyway. Or
That's every line that the kids say as soon as they have to face it. I thought said a lot about them, not just with Connors, but Kendall getting on the phone, taking his little corner. Same way Roman said, go find a little corner and just do your
yeah.
little private thing. Kendall's, I can't forgive you, but it's okay. Ooh.
Yeah. That's a great one too.
Yeah, that may be one of the best things that they've written for him, or that came out of I don't know where. Because I like how they were all talking about their processes, and
Mhm.
Kendall was like, "Nah, I got to be in there. Like, someone is dying. That's just me." And I'm like, "You would
Right.
be." What's his name? What's the actor's name? He does do that in
Jeremy
every
Strong.
performance. He goes a little too overboard, and you could just tell that he stayed in that state of mind. So I don't know if that came from him, if that was already written for him, but I can't forgive you, breath, but it's okay is a huge line, and it goes hand in hand with the conversation we were having last week about was the father there at the karaoke bar to really apologize or to still do business, and I think that was the best closing line. I cannot forgive you, but it's okay. Killed it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, well, Tom, Frank, Carl, and Carolina on board with the body decide that they have to start taking next steps, which is, you know, the moment then the kids then have to spring into action or not, right? It's sort of like what you're talking about. They take their moment to grieve. And then Kendall is the first one of them that sort of starts to snap back into business. I thought it was a really interesting line when he said, we're highly liable to misinterpretation. So what we do today will always be what we did the day our father died. So let's, you know, grieve and whatever, but not do anything that restricts our future freedom of movement. And that to me is like, all right, they snap back to it.
Business.
Like they might be sad, but there's still a lot at stake and they realize it.
Yeah. I think he also gets a look from Hugo when Hugo comes into the room and he goes,
Mm,
"Are you ready, son?" I'm reading a little too into that one, right? Bit of will has
mm-hmm.
been made.
Right.
Right.
Uh, I mean, we assume so. There better be.
Has to be.
I think an interesting question to ask, though, if we're talking about a will, is whether or not Carrie is in it.
Ugh. I think that I hope not. I think that Carrie may be so dumbstruck from it because she realized that she just kind of got downgraded and is almost like
Mm-hmm.
slap happy with this idea of like, will I still be involved? And I think in that conversation in particular, Alina and I had a discussion about this. When she comes out all slap happy, right? Very confused
Mm-hmm.
about what has just happened. That Carolina tells her, "Hey, about we're working on something here. If you could just go to the back." And then she's like, "So do you need
Just
me here?"
make yourself
And to
comfortable.
me, yeah, Lena and I were discussing, should she have been told, "No, you're not involved, just go to the back"? I think the direction was already given that you were not involved. Go to the back, yet she still felt the need to be, will I be included? Will I be this? I To me, she's feeling she's not a part of the will. She's been pushed to the side as anchors. She wants to be included in some way, shape, or form because it's done for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same way that Greg has been told, you were at the bottom of the pole. What are you now? I think Carrie's in the same position. The one person who was defending him the most, gone.
Yeah. She lost her protector, and so did Tom. I think one of the moments that I haven't seen people talking about a whole lot, but really stuck out to me was Tom's phone call to Greg, where he tells
In the
Greg the
room, yeah.
news that Logan's died and asks him to go into the office to delete that logistics folder, that pesky logistics folder that's got some pretty damning information in it. They've always sort of like dangled that bit of information too. And I guess it's interesting that they chose in this moment to not let you forget that there's some stuff Tom is still holding on to that could potentially
Mm-hmm.
be quite damaging. He also, I thought, interestingly, tells Greg that people should know that
That's
he
the
was
funniest
with
part.
Logan when he died.
That's hilarious. Get the little
Yeah.
birdies out there. Tell your story, right? You
Hmm.
just brought up the line that you quoted from Kendall. We will be defined, or what is it, by what we did on the day of our father's death. He's realizing the same thing. I need to be on the record books as having been there by his side on his death day. Everyone's
Hmm.
just writing their history. It's insane. Yeah.
So as we were talking about, the kids start to scramble for their bit of power. They decide they have to be on the statement. Kendall says that even if they want to change their minds tomorrow, they need to keep their options open by appearing in control of the company for the time being. And then there's that really devastating scene where Roman tries to open up to Gerri after when they're in that room together, and she just
Mm-hmm.
completely cold shoulders him.
I didn't understand. I understood Jerry emotionally. But if you've got your job back, wouldn't you want to comfort the one kid who may still be in succession and
Hmm.
thus can have a difference of opinion in terms of firing you? Like, I understand she's got like unfired. She's like, screw you for being. I get
Right.
that. But like, don't you still want to have an in? Like the top dog is gone. It's the kids now.
Yeah.
I would
and,
have
and
given
I,
him a tap on the back at least. But I understand. Like, you just got fired an hour ago by the same kid.
exactly. And maybe it's a little bit of her just having enough of their shit and realizing like she doesn't need
It's the
maybe
biggest thing, bro.
need him as much.
I don't know. Like, to me, you how old
Yeah.
are these kids? 30s. You have been doing everything. This is the day where you're not gonna provide what you've provided for so many other random days. You know, like just knowing
Hmm.
their relationship. I thought that really sucked because it's like I don't know. He really wanted it. There's just that one moment when the door closes and he just wished that she was there to just hug him or give him some sort of
Yeah.
embrace. Those little weak embraces he was giving everybody
A
else. He
hug from
wanted someone to
sexy
just
mommy.
bear
Yeah.
hug him. Damn. We'll see. That's gonna be really interesting how that plays out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, there
We've
is
never
that
seen them as
moment when,
oppositions.
right, yeah, we haven't seen them on against each other, so that might be an interesting future thing to follow as well. Um Culkin, I think, in that first talk, it's really interesting. There's a moment when Gerri says, "This means nothing to me," and I do feel like there's a part of Gerri who kind of feels like she's been through enough of the bullshit, and she doesn't really need like, kind of where Frank was when he first got fired, where it's like, "I'm old, I got my money, I
That's right. He got
you
fired
can't
once
really
already.
affect me emotionally anymore."
True. True. True.
So then we have the press conference where everybody finally arrives at Teterboro to deliver the news to the world, and Shiv steps in front of the microphone, adding that the kids intend to shepherd the company's future. We'll be there. Just as they were finally out, they're all pulled right back in to Waystar Royco. Let's maybe do a little bit of stock up, stock down, because now
All right.
that Logan is out of the way, is there anybody whose future you're buying into? Anybody who you think is most destined to be atop of this corporate ladder by the end, or do you feel like they're all doomed to failure on this show?
I said that I thought that there may be hints of Hugo telling Kendall, "Hey, you may be up next."
Mm,
I have like seeing the growth of Shiv, but I feel he's still not impressed by Kendall. He's still upset that Shiv's the one who. What did you say? You got the highest bid, you morons. I think he may have something in store for Roman, specifically because he made sure to get rid of the only person who can take down Roman, the
mm,
only person who had stuff on him. So that was
interesting.
already in the works. So I'm wondering if he was just planning to give it to the one son who hasn't left his side. That
Interesting.
would
I
really
mean,
make it a Roman season.
yeah, absolutely. And it would, I mean, it would make sense given what is set to come on Succession, because the two big remaining things going on story wise, or the biggest things, I guess, are this acquisition of Gojo by Matson, who has the closest relationship to Roman of the three kids, and the ongoing
Great point.
presidential election where Justin Kirk playing Jared Mencken, he also had like a long heart to heart with Roman, previous season. So Roman
Hmm.
has a big connection to whatever
He
the
does.
future of Waystar Royco is.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he might be in the prime position. It still kind of feels like Kendall is the one playing point, even amongst the kids, and figuring out like the next moves. So maybe it's just because Jeremy Strong is such a big presence on this show, but I'm inclined to lean that way, at least for their future. But we'll see. I don't think this is a show that is very practiced in delivering happy endings to its characters.
Absolutely not. Or its actors when they realize they're on
Yeah.
their final season and no one told
Well, that was another funny thing. In I don't know if you listen to the Succession podcast at all that HBO puts out. Apparently,
them. Hmm.
Brian Cox, one of the things that he was made him okay with his character dying is he still got paid for the full season.
You're lying.
If
He
he's
won.
unless he's lying on
He
the
won.
podcast.
My G, we as soon as the show ended, we go. There's probably going to be 9. He's missing 6. 6 times 300K minimum. Minimum.
Now my man is
Shout
doing
out
well.
Logan.
That's
There we
Logan Roy
go
move
with
right
the
there.
severance package.
Yeah.
Woo! Okay, so his presence will be felt at least at the accounting department.
Hmm.
Wow, nice. Okay. Yeah, you can take me out episode 3 too then.
uh, the
Clean
kids
shot.
share a. Sorry.
Clean shot. Clean
Yeah,
shot. Not
the
better than
kids
the one
step
from last
outside
season.
and
You know which one I'm talking about.
oh yeah, of course, that season 3 moment. I mean, it feels like we get one moment of like physical intimacy between the siblings every season that is sort of the emotional climax for some bits. But this one in particular just feels really cathartic and necessary, but it also to me potentially spells out what we're destined to see on Succession. I wonder if they're doing a clever bit of like foreshadowing here in that
Okay,
this
how so?
moment of tragedy has brought them all together. They're acting more like a family than basically at any previous point in this show. I thought also another interesting moment that we didn't talk about was when they do decide to go tell Connor that Kendall steps up partially because he sees Roman doesn't feel able to, but that Shiv also steps up to do it with Kendall, and they hold hands like they're actually trying to help each other for a change. But immediately after this hug, all 3 of them go their separate ways. Shiv gets into the car with Tom. Roman goes to check on the body. Kendall just watches from afar. And I wonder if that's the Succession writers being very smart and telling us that this is the closest they'll ever be. And now we're going to watch them all move away from each other and separate.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll see. And Connor's just
Yeah,
gonna be on
we'll
his own
see.
getting married.
And then the episode, of course, ends with another brilliant bit of Nicholas Bertel's score. I mean, that always
Decent.
is like the thing that brings this together. It's those drops at the end of the episode just always feel like a big exhale moment. I feel my
Yeah.
body tension start to dissipate after that.
It's so good. I've heard people complain about, the Game of Thrones one, right? Oh no, I think it was Nikolai said he couldn't watch the new series because it was the same intro. We've had this discussion
Hmm.
as well. Star Wars has done it. Game of Thrones is doing it. If you give me the prequel, I want those piano keys for Succession to stay.
Yes, yes, hey, it has to be. I mean, HBO's
Coming around
already
to
done
it.
it, like you said.
Yeah, they've done it already.
Yeah.
I don't mind.
Do you have a favorite quote from this episode? I got a couple more that we haven't run through yet.
Besides, bringing back up the Scrooge one, it was more so moments. Again, I really like those reactions from Roman where he's just like, get the phone away from me. I was like, woo.
Yeah.
I don't know. He hit those pockets where it really felt like you were just voyeuristically seeing somebody who just got the call that their father died, and the way that
Yeah.
it gripped the siblings. So it was more those moments. But what quotes you got?
Yeah, the painful moments that it feels like we shouldn't be witness to, but Succession allows us to
Because
be.
you get him so quick,
Uh,
then the camera pans away, so you just got that little glisten of his eye
yeah,
before the tear dropped. It's crazy.
yeah. We mentioned Frank earlier. I thought when he says, "I'm trying to do my job," he's like 12 feet away, and I knew him for 40 years. We're not pulling anything here. Just
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
very real delivery on that too. And again, this is a show where everybody's constantly jockeying for control, but like it's a little hard to be in that mindset when there's a dead body right over there, right?
Yeah. Carolina MVP for this episode, by the way. She's the one who made sure to get everything together. She's probably the one who told Tom who to call after
Yep.
Shiv wasn't answering, and she was the one who put everything together. Mind you, not everyone's listening to her, but I think she's the one who knew, hey, no fishy business here, but we do need a statement for everyone's sake.
Yeah. Carolina, maybe she should be in control by the end. Another great line, Connor, my father's dead and I feel old. I don't know. That one hit me right in the heart. That's so tragic. Connor, we didn't talk about his little heart to heart with Willow, which I thought was one of the best scenes of this entire episode.
Mm-hmm. Talk about it.
I mean, they're finally like able to lay bare their relationship. He asks her if she's just with him for money, and she says money's a part of it. But she's happy, and I believe her there, like they're like, obviously she's there because he's provides her with a sense of protection and a sense of security, but like he's kind of a fun goof, and I feel like they actually complement each other in weird ways. I liked also when she's like, I'm not going to divorce you, not today at least.
I think this is a combo that gives you another set of Succession kids. I'll leave it at that.
Oh,
Not a
wait,
good recipe.
Succession kids. We should probably talk about one other element that I think would be very interesting
Okay.
if they choose to follow this path. Because Caitlin actually reminded me of something that happened on last season that I'm worried a lot of people are forgetting. And there's just a very little moment when they're at the wedding. Let me see if it'll pull up here.
Who's
And
winning?
Connor mentions that dad is working on his baby batter. He's drinking that maca root. He might be
Stop. You think Carrie's
trying for a
pregnant?
kid with Carrie. Could that be another shoe to drop later this season?
Damn. What an anchor. Sheesh. That feels gross. Now
Another
when you process
Roy
it.
sibling
Yeah,
joins
maybe.
the fold.
Maybe. Ill.
Ugh.
Yikes.
But the best quote of the episode is probably Kendall. We'll get a funeral off the rack. We'll do Reagan's with tweaks. So good.
I wonder how many of those he goes. I know he's not improving those, right? So I wonder how many
Yeah.
of those he has, and then how he tweaks it to the moment, or if he gets it like straight out with those quips. But how's it going?
Yeah, I mean the cutting room floor in the Succession dreader room I'm sure is littered with gold. I like Ashnik here in the live stream comments brought
That's
up.
a good one.
Greg, please don't use my name as a verb. I'm still a human being.
Don't use the name as a verb yet. But Gregging is a good verb, though. Not gonna lie.
It is, and you immediately know what he means as well.
I agree. Before we get into your what's next to wrap it up, I know you had started another question from Ashnik that said, does shooting on film versus digital have significant difference since we are watching it through streaming anyway? I think that's a really good question. I'll let you start that one.
I mean, there's certainly like, I don't know if you can notice all of the quality if you're not watching it in a pristine environment, for sure. Like if your TV is maybe not the most up to date, you might not notice these things as well. But there is like a different quality to how it looks when it's shot on film versus on digital. And I think particularly because this is like a very high society world that we're in, and they're this is the elites of the elites, and these lavish environments. There's like almost like a classiness to giving it that filmic look, like a very like traditional kind of environment and vibe to it. So I do think it like fits the tone of the show as well. And then when you add in the fact that like maybe because they're shooting on film, they are a little bit more precious, a little bit more intentional, and just
That's a big
making
thing,
sure
yeah.
that they're getting the most out of it. So I think there's things that you can tell, but also some things that maybe subconsciously affect the quality when you're shooting on film for something like this.
Yeah, longevity too. Having it on film
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you won't be able to showcase it later. So the question being like, you may not be getting the best of it, but I can guarantee you, watching something on your phone that's shot on a phone compared to something shot on cameras, on that same little tiny screen, you will see a difference. So I think the difference still showcases, even if you're not getting the most quality. But you never know; they may have showings of it in some sort, but you still feel the artifacts of what the film is. And like Zach said, that's a big thing that throughout the years, I think a lot of directors have gravitated towards. You're able to get different performances from your actors because of the way that the set runs when you have film. So I still think it's worth it. I think you notice a lot of the grain and the scratches on there.
Yeah.
So good question.
And especially that moment we were talking about where they do the 20 minutes 27-minute scene. I mean, that urgency that is so palpable in those
And to catch
moments.
it on film.
Yeah, maybe it does feel that much more urgent because they know they're only doing this the one time, they're getting it on film. So
It
yeah,
just
I
looks
think there
great.
are qualities that benefit to shooting it on film. All right, but let's talk about what's next for the show, because with Logan gone, Kendall,
Dead.
Roman, and Shiv lost
Did you pour
their
one out for Logan
primary.
last night, bro?
We should we pour one out now? I can pour a little out for Logan right now.
Yeah, figuratively
Let me
speaking, to Logan,
do it on camera
to
a little bit.
Papa Logan. Oh dear,
Miss my
all
try
over
to
the
miss my
keyboard.
laptop.
The stream's done. Yeah, no, it stinks, bro. It's one of the biggest TV deaths.
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly on like the level of the red weddings or what have you, and particularly because Succession has given us wedding episodes before, and yeah, there has been some tragedy in them, but nothing like this. So I think everybody was anticipating Connor's wedding to be this goofy, hilarious affair, and then, man, 16 minutes in, they drop that anvil on you. Do you think this is Succession's best episode? Because I saw a lot of people
You
coming
know,
out hot, giving it
that's a
that
really,
praise.
really interesting debate that I have been seeing. I love the episode. I do not think it's the best episode. I understand why people love it, and I think it's great. All of the episodes are great, and this could easily be a top five episode for people. I don't think it's entering anyone's top three when all is said and done, especially because we still have so much more this season. I think it's the excitement of holy, how did this happen in the third one that's got us a little bit jarred. You know, it's that festival fever.
Recency
You're still sitting
bias.
there within the crowd. Yeah, that doesn't mean it's not good, but there have been better episodes. It's just the shock of what they did here that I think should speak in and of itself as something like, you know,
Hmm.
like I don't even think Red Wedding is people's top five episodes, but I think the Red Wedding is like the biggest shock culturally to people not
Right.
expecting to see something like that in a series. And I think Succession's now been able to do that. I know people in the chat were mentioning these episode threes now tend to be this really big thing to look
Turning
forward
point.
to. They used to be the slump, right? It's like, oh, the pilot,
Hmm.
2, 3, 4. All right, five's gonna set up what's gonna happen in 7 and 8. Nah, so I like the change that this has caused. I hope that this is remembered as something like, oh, you can invigorate the beginning of your seasons a lot faster, not have to drag it out, especially in the streaming
Hmm.
age. So it's still a really good episode. I wouldn't argue with anybody who put it in the top, especially because I see a lot of people having visceral reactions to experiences they've had. This show got this episode got that right, like you were saying,
Hmm.
how it really feels to get news like that, and I think a lot of people are connecting to that in a way that I can think of very little episodes or TV or shorts that have embodied that. Is it in your top five?
It's it's weird because I agree with what you're saying, right? Like when you look at this episode compared to like what it does compared to like the entire landscape of film and TV, it's doing some really amazing unseen things. I think it's going to some really emotionally vulnerable places that it's rare to get to, and also just the journey that we've been on, that we've spent so much time with this family and with Logan in particular, that
Weekly
like
basis for sure.
exactly years and weeks, and we have arrived at a point where you can actually grieve for his character. Like you, it does actually feel like a loss of some kind because we've spent so much
Yeah.
time with him, and to be embedded with the family as they all process it too is just such a it's so vital and feels so alive. It feels so lived in those moments. So it is like a very, very special episode of TV. But like also when I think about it in terms of Succession, so many of the things that I love about Succession are not things that happened in these episodes, right? Like you mentioned, like even just the lack of Brian Cox in this episode, like can that disqualify it from being the best Succession episode? I don't know. And like I really love episodes like Which Side Are You On or Too Much Birthday, but they also have these moments when looking back at them, it's like not there are little like extraneous bits that aren't necessarily the most important things in Succession, and this
Hmm.
episode was all extremely important things. That's another thing that makes it feel like a that much bigger of an episode. That recency bias does make me want to put it like towards the top of my list, maybe not all the way at number 1, but like in that top 3. But I also we need to see how it all plays out, right? Like if this leads to a terrible episode 4, which I can't imagine it will, but if it does,
Ooh,
that's going to
okay, I see
change
what you
how
mean.
this episode tastes in the future.
Dang. Yeah, it could either be retroactively the worst episode, or it catapults into what's going to be so good you're not even going to remember this one for what it leads to. Okay.
Absolutely. I mentioned Brian Cox was interviewed on the Succession podcast earlier, and I thought he mentioned something else pretty interesting. And I don't know if I've seen this talked about much or reported officially. He said that each episode is supposed to be a day, with this third episode being day 3. So if that's
Wow.
what is actually happening, and we've got another 7 episodes of Succession left, does that mean we have a week left in the timeline of this show? And does that
He
sound
died.
interesting to you?
You saying he died on the third day on Easter? That's actually really fascinating. I'd be curious to see how that plays out for the other episodes, because then that means that each one won't have a lot of bouncing back and forth between storylines as much as it is perspectives, right? So like
Yes.
the trailer for this next one, I don't usually watch the trailers, but I had to, right? I'm like, let me see if he's
Hmm.
really really gone. Um, they cut that up to look like possibly one of my favorite episodes. Though that trailer looks like what I come to Succession for. Everyone
Right.
firing on all cylinders, which this episode had for sure. But it's that everybody has a want, and it looks like this next episode's gonna give me that. It just looks like it's gonna be nothing but bars, bro. I'm very excited for it.
So do you think this is going to be a lot of sibling rivalry headed into the back half of the season, or are
Sibling.
are we going to get a little bit more unity than maybe I'm expecting at least?
I think the unity is going to come in the least expected ways, because it's not just a sibling rivalry. It's also everyone who's working at the company. It's also other forces, the people who they have to provide money for, those funding it. Yeah, it's a blast. I'm
Yeah.
excited. 6 episodes. I hope they go all out.
Same. I mean, there's no reason to not trust them at this point, and to deliver like what is unquestionably one of their all-time great episodes this deep into the run. Like they still got it, obviously, and they
Day
brought
in
out the
flesh.
heavy hitters for this one. Jesse Armstrong wrote it. Mark Mylod directed it. So they knew that they had to step up for it. And if they decided to do it this early, that means they must have a lot of stuff they want to do for after Logan's death. And I'm
Hmm.
really excited by the fact that they have given themselves so much time to deal with the fallout. That to me has been the kind of lingering question, like what happens to these kids when dad isn't there to make up for their mistakes, or kind of just be like this person who can't be crossed, that gives them security. So it will be interesting to see what happens when they do start to try to wrestle control from one another rather than just from their father. I hope that they will remain somewhat amicable for the run, but I don't have my expectations high for them to get along at least.
Me neither.
So let me wrap it up with this. What will it be like for you to watch the show without Brian Cox? You already talked about how you're gonna miss that Titanic performance, but are you still looking forward to Succession every week?
Yeah, I have to see how it all plays out. I have to see what he left in store for them. I think there's still several episodes where you're going to feel his presence just because of whatever web he still had laid out in case he died. I do agree with the chat. It's the one thing I've been saying. I think the scummiest character in the entire show is Greg, and I think he still has a couple of Gregness things up his sleeve. As the great nephew who still got put on the LA Times obituary. But yeah, I'm still looking forward to see how it's all going to play out. Um, and I hope they wrap it up
Yeah,
nicely.
same. I just this is my favorite show on TV right now, so I'm
He's my favorite. He was my
always
favorite character
excited to see what.
easily.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's at least locked up the best guest actor Emmy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, anything else we want to talk about with this episode, one of the huge episodes of Succession, Connor's wedding?
No, just I'm curious to see if this ends up being one of the best ones of this season alone, with everything that we still have in store. And I'm curious to see what else they do with Succession, because it's built up to be one of the biggest things that they've had. In true Succession theory, you would think that they would do some spin off or a movie or something of the sort. I think they have various ways to go with all the characters that they have with prior stories, but I just hope they wrap this one up in the best way possible.
Yeah, same for me. I'm just gonna be tuning in every week and keeping my expectations high because I love the show so much. But we'll be back every week leading up to the finale because there's still a lot left to come. Jesse Armstrong mentioned that he cried delivering this news to Brian Cox, and he also cried at the table read for the last episode. So there might be some more tragedy
He said he
left.
was scared, man. They should have had Greg go deliver the news.
Yeah, he should have learned taken a lesson from himself. But that's all for this week's edition of the Intercut Podcast Succession Recap. Catch more from me, Zach Shevich, by following me on Twitter, Instagram, or Letterboxd at ZShevich. That's ZSHEV is in Walter, ICH. And check out my YouTube or TikTok channels at Multiplex Show. Art, where can people find more from you?
You can find me, Morning Logan over on Twitter, on Letterbox, on YouTube at LME Explain, or catch me every week here talking about Succession on the Intercut podcast.
Yeah, we'll be here every week talking about stuff on Intercut with which you can listen to on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, whatever your favorite podcatcher
Shout out
is.
to
I like
chat.
Overcast. And then thanks to all of y'all who are also watching our video feed on youtube.com/intercutpod, including the people in the live stream. You can catch us every Monday doing the Intercut Weekend Must Watch, which is streaming right after this. So if you are with us, make sure to stay tuned for that. Like our videos, leave us a comment, consider heading to iTunes to give us that much requested 5-star review. Shout out to those of you in the Netherlands and Ireland for putting us on the TV and film
Ooh.
podcast charts out there. You can like our Facebook, you can follow our Instagram, you can follow our Twitter, or you can support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. And you can find all of those links at Intercut Pod or in the description down below. Also, a link to
Nice.
our Discord down below where you can chat with us throughout the week and get updates from Art, from me, from all the guests we feature here on Intercut, including Movie Files and Karsten Runquist. Shouts to both of you for hopping in the live stream earlier. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed to our Patreon too, because we're going to be doing a bunch of fun stuff on the pod soon. We got a A24 bracket that we will need y'all's help assembling. So if you want to help us figure
The
out
bracket
which
before the
films will
bracket.
qualify for the top 64, the bracket before the bracket, uh, drop us $1 a month on patreon.com and you can come
Appreciate it.
hang out with us during our April patron hangout. Thanks again for tuning in. And until next time, Mr. Scrooge just happened to be a huge wealth creator, but they don't mention that in Mr. Dickens's books now, do they?